Welcome to the OTP. I'm Amy Wells. Every spring, we spend a lot of time talking about the evaluation process and how each team goes about the business of selecting the roster for the upcoming season. We compare measurements and statistics. We watch people jump and run and throw and catch. We lay out their history both on and off the field. But there's one area that we don't talk about much. That's the language of scouting. You see, every draft room across the league speaks its own language. It's the way they communicate to one another what they are seeing when they look at a certain prospect. General Manager Mike Borgonzi made reference to that language on his very first day as a Titan, and then again with our own Rhett Bryan at the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. Here's a portion of that conversation right here on the OTP.
I want to go back to one of your first availabilities as general manager of the Titans. And you mentioned about generational talent. It's clear that there's some generational talent, I think, that everybody agrees on near the top of this thing. And with the number one pick, obviously, you said that and everybody ran and wrote columns about it and all those kinds of things. But you mentioned something that harkens back to a conversation that Coach Mack and Amy had in a previous podcast a few years ago with Mike Giddings Jr., with the Pro Scout stuff that his dad did back in the 70s. And you mentioned blue players. And without giving away trade secrets, I wanted to ask you about the color-coded system. And obviously it sounds like you use a modified version of that and how that works.
Yeah, the first time I was introduced to that was in Kansas City when John Dorsey came from Green Bay. So we do use that color code system, blue being the highest level player. That's what we call a rare player in the league, generational player in the league. It's a rare skill set of physical talent, character makeup that all goes into making that player a blue player. And basically, we just go down. There's 4 different levels of starters. There's a red player, which is an impact player, a gold player, which is a good starter, and then you have starters with limitations, and then you have backups. So we've kind of tweaked that skill a little bit over the years as the league's evolved a little bit, just to add a little bit more definition into the scale. But that's something that I took back, I guess it was 2013 when I really started working with that scale.
But you guys, you speak your own language with that, because it's like when you're talking to another evaluator, you're talking about, all right, I see a linebacker, he's got blue feet.
Right. So that we want to speak the same language.
Yeah.
So when we're in the room, this is a red player. This is a black player. So we want to be on the same page and speak the same language when we're in that room. That's all part of the process and setting up a new system. And it's a little bit new to these guys now. And we went through it for this past 3 weeks in meetings. But that's the only way to teach it, is actually go through the meetings and you're watching tape. Okay, this is what a blue player looks like. This is what a red player looks like. So everybody's on the same page when we're discussing the evaluation of the player.
That's he mentioned Amy. I know Mike Giddings very well. All the time I've been in the league, and Gids, when they started putting that thing out, I understand that language. What's important about that is, as you say, when you're bringing everybody else together, and we're gonna have Giddings on, I think, with what we talked about before. That's very important, and it's very interesting too. I was glad to hear that.
Yeah, no, he invented that whole scale.
Yes.
And it's carried on into the league and different organizations, and people have kind of tweaked it a little bit, and we did in Kansas City a little bit. But it was really, he really started that whole system, and it's something that's carried over for years.
How long does it take to instill that in a new group? Because it is a little different language, a little different code. Does it take a minute to kind of get the reps under you and get refamiliar with what each thing means?
Sure. I think it's just like being out in the field and practice. When you're
Right.
practicing plays, it's the same thing. So when we go through the process, we had to stop a couple of times for discussions about this is what this means in the process. This is how we evaluate this position. This is what a blue means. This is what a red means. So we went through all that in those meetings. And it's important to have patience in the process too when you're doing it, because you want to teach it the right way to make sure everybody's on the same page, everybody's speaking the same language, so we can make the best decisions for the team.
Taking that time to really be all football all the time with the same group of people day in and day out, not only from an evaluation standpoint, but just from a team standpoint, getting to understand how the other guys in the room approach things, how they talk. That has to be so beneficial too.
It is, and for us, we played sports. It's like being in the locker room. Mm-hmm. That's where you build that camaraderie and that bond and that that togetherness is when you're going through those meetings. it's very similar to for me and for a lot of people that played, it's like being in the locker room. And that's where you really start to get that rapport with everybody else on the team, and you start to become a team when you're going through that process.
This summer, SeatGeek has your ticket to the best live concerts in Nashville at Nissan Stadium. SeatGeek has the best seat, your seat, for an unforgettable summer. From rock royalty to rap superstars, R&B to country, find it all on SeatGeek, the official ticketing partner of Nissan Stadium. Little Caesars is the official pizza partner of your Tennessee Titans. Download the Little Caesars app and get your favorites delivered today. Delivery fees apply. Now, back to the OTP. So where do these terms come from? What's the genesis of this system of colors and numbers? Well, thank you for asking. The answer is Mike Giddings and a company called Pro Scout Incorporated. We had the chance to talk with his son, Mike Giddings Jr., who is the current president of Pro Scout, to get a better understanding of this system, the business, and the impact that they have had on the NFL. Here's my conversation with Mike Giddings Jr., joined by the great Dave McGinnis, better known as Coach Mac. I guess I'm just going to start with Pro Scout Incorporated. That is your business, and I'm kind of wondering what exactly that is and the genesis of that whole industry of scouting.
My father started the company back in 1977. He was a former coach in the NFL, and he came up with the idea of Pro Scout when there was a competing league called the World Football League. And he was the head coach, GM of the Hawaii team. And the World Football League started before the NFL. And the NFL had their final cuts about halfway through the season of the World Football League. He added about 10 players who got cut, and it turned around their season. So he came up, the thought was, wow, there are guys that get cut at the end of the season that have the ability to play in the league. Maybe there was an abundance of players at the position or a wrong fit. After the World Football League folded, he went to the Denver Broncos as the offensive line coach and first director of pro personnel, and stayed there for a year and had this idea for the company. And it started off with 6 teams back in 1977, and we've had as many as 16. I came on board after playing at Illinois in 1988, and kind of the color system that most teams use for players, Pro Scout invented back in 1977. So instead of using numbers, we identified players as blue, red, purple, orange players instead of using numbers. And it's first started off with to upgrade the bottom of the roster. Then came Plan B, then came the free agency, then came the salary cap, and it's evolved into kind of helping teams make their rosters, analytics, height, weight, and 40 times, and kind of identifying maybe players who are declining so you don't make a fiscal mistake with them.
Gids, this is so interesting. And again, I came into the league in 1986 with the Bears, and when I was first exposed, to the Giddings book, and let me just say this, and I think I'm not speaking anything out of school here. The Giddings book was something very valuable to teams because the information was not shared. It was not shared, and you guys sold it exclusively to clubs that were willing to not only purchase it but to be within that realm. But you never went public with it. You never went public with it, and so when you had access to this, it really, especially back then, as I said, I came in '86, and it opened up a whole new world. I learned a lot of how to just evaluate National Football League players. From that. And to me, it was fascinating because when I told Amy, I want to get Mike Giddings on for 2 reasons. First of all, he's a great dude. Second of all, he's a good friend of myself and Jeff Fisher's. And third of all, what he and his dad did, I said, people don't really know about, because now you've got all these scouting services, you got everything on the internet, you've got everything that's out there that's available, and everybody is an expert now, okay? But you guys truly were the ones that could boil it down for an NFL team, and as you said, just what you said, to identify declining players so you didn't make a fiscal mistake on somebody off of reputation only. Talk to me a little bit about how your dad came up with that color system and how you guys have refined it.
It was interesting, he went to Cal, and Max, he was one of those guys that, remember in the old days, you had to, draw up the cards and on the board. He could draw the perfect circles and squares and lines and zags, and his printing was impeccable. It was like computer generated.
Right.
So every coach was in love, like, okay, we know who we're doing the cards. Because nobody liked doing the cards. And he got the idea from, you remember the old Ram scout, John Math?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And so John Math kind of goes like, back, the Xerox printing out stats and things, like, I hate looking at numbers. He goes, why don't you use colors? So we do use a number system to evaluate, and it correlates to a color. So the book, and in the old days, we used to hand color the books.
Wow.
So I'd go get a bunch of my high school friends, and we'd have coloring books at the end of the season, coloring up teams. And then we created, some axioms, and the colors, basically what we tried to do is correlate it to, if we were the owner, how much would we pay? What's the worth of the player? So blue being the highest color, the blues should be the highest paid. And to kind of structure that, I would say what we always tried to do, we always thought it was our dollars or our money if you were acquiring a player, and what was the cost, and to not make fiscal mistakes. And then the other key one was, with my dad being a coach and growing up in that atmosphere and understanding coach language, this way, the most frustrating thing, Coach Mash, you'll get this, is, coaches have a different language than personnel people, to analytic people, to owners. And if you can be, say, multilingual in that concept. I had a GM, I sat down to a meeting, and usually it's the owner, the GM, the head coach. And we're walking out after the meeting. He goes, it amazes me how you can translate or switch to the dialogue to the person you're talking to. So when I'm talking to, say, Coach Mack about defense, and I go, this linebacker, when he scrapes off, gets near the line of scrimmage, he crosses over too soon, doesn't keep his outside arm, free. Well, Coach Mack knows exactly what I'm saying. Whereas a personnel guy, I would have to use different type of language to explain why I like this linebacker or don't like this linebacker. Or, pass rush, I go to Coach Mack. He goes, Coach Mack, he's got that long first step. He works half the man. And when that first move gets fronted, he can counter because he has hand-feet coordination. Coach Mack's eyes are getting big because he knows, like, oh, that's rare.
Yeah, I like that dude.
Yeah.
And to kind of like describe and get people on the same page, and it would be, the more you can sit and listen to the coach, and they can, say, describe, the players they want, because every Super Bowl team is different. So knowing Coach Mack, like, Coach Mack's not going to be real happy if I give him an outside linebacker that doesn't run blue or red.
Boy, you're talking my language now.
Yeah, and his corners better be able to play man. If I'm giving Coach Mack a bunch of slow zone corner, he's going to look at me and go, Gids doesn't know what he's doing. So understanding what the team's looking for. And I believe in evaluation, it starts with you eliminate first. So knowing what traits should be blue, red, purple, because in the perfect world, everybody would be, blue, speed, strength, and ability, but that's not the perfect world. And the great coaches can tell you, if he does this purple, I'm okay. And that, to an evaluator, like, oh, okay. They don't have to be the perfect size, speed, strength, and understanding that allows you to go find, say, the middle tier players or up the bottom end of your roster that can fill a need, and or upgrade your team in other ways than your, say, 10 core blue players.
How do you think that the evolution of scouting and how advanced it's become with the inclusion of technology and these big events like the NFL Scouting Combine and all of the different data points that people are able to collect now, how do you think that growth has impacted the growth of the game on the field?
That's a great question. I think it's played a huge part. When, and the old Coach Mack will remember this one. I mean, I started off with a Kodak analyst as a projector.
Oh, yeah.
And remember, then we went to the Betacam.
Yeah.
And then we went to, the Surface Pro that you can have it on a computer. You can plug it into a monitor. And I can remember my first job when I started working with, I would just grab the tape and go get numbers, because sometimes it was hard to see numbers because the quality of the tape wasn't good. So you'd have to, really be patient and work hard. What was interesting then, at the end of probably, I guess maybe Coach Mack, 17 years ago,
yeah,
or 20 years ago, at the final cut, they would go like, okay, we'd love to go pick up a linebacker to play special teams. And the scouts would come in and go, okay, here are the three guys. Well, you'd have to sit through preseason tape, going, okay, let me know when he's in the game. Let me know when he's in the game. Whereas now, in seconds, they can take that player and go, here are the 80 plays he played in preseason. Let's watch him. So technology, I think, has played a huge part to, a coach will sit down and look at a guy for an hour. But if it's going to be a 4-hour process, maybe not so.
Gids, that's so great that you say that. The other thing that I think you were always able to do is because you were in it so long and people begin to trust you so much, you could kind of, and coaching staffs stayed together for a long time, you could start to match players to staffs because you know what people wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. That would, understanding exactly what you liked on defense, to give, say, Jeff, not a hard running back. So exactly the personality of the team, and it would be a short period of time, and exactly you build up that trust of, okay, Gids and pro scouts understand what we're looking for, and the names he recommends, I'll go look because it's the type of player I want. And whether, and it's usually, say, the backup and knowing that he's got to play good special teams and or be, a guy that's not going to make errors, like the third running back's got to play special teams, all of them. And if he has to, he's got to maybe go play a little H-back, so I need a smart guy that's not going to make errors. Yeah, I know he's not as physically gifted as my number one, but this is what I want as my number 3.
Awesome. Well, Mike Giddings, thank you so much for taking some time to chat with us. This has been... Mac, it's just been incredible.
Well, I told you Gids would be great because, he is. He and his dad they're icons in this business.
Hey, Titans fans, with a Kroger Boost membership, you'll score big with double fuel points, free delivery, and lots more. Go to Kroger.com/boost for details. Kroger, the official grocer of the Tennessee Titans. Tighten up. Home is the forefront of all we do. It's why we're so committed to caring for the places and spaces in which we work and live. Ashley, the official furniture provider of the Tennessee Titans. Now, back to the OTP. So there it is, a little insight into the system that scouts use right here in Nashville to describe their evaluation of players. I hope you found this peek into the history of the NFL enjoyable, informative, or, at the very least, entertaining. It's all part of the service we provide here on the Official Titans podcast. We hope that you will join us next time as we continue to get closer and closer to the NFL draft. A big thank you to Mike Borgonzi, Rhett Bryan, Coach Mack, and Mike Giddings Jr. for their participation in this edition of the OTP. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.